Okay, so, have you played Genshin Impact? Do you want to play Genshin Impact? Do you want to play Genshin Impact, but are afraid of being judged for it? So you need a game not called Genshin Impact. Genshin Impact. Joking aside, Tower of Fantasy has a lot of overlap with Genshin Impact. Disclaimer. I find the waifu simulator style off-putting. Maybe I'm a bit of a prude, or maybe I'm just a little too old for the sexualization of a lot of these characters. I mean, I always found the sexualization of fictional, non-human. I always found the sexualization of not real characters a little weird. But as I get older, I think having to ask if she looks of legal age before I decide to objectify her probably means I shouldn't be in the first place. And objectify her is also hilariously ironic wording, considering it is the personification of an object to begin with. Tower of Fantasy is an open-world ARPG, with a strong emphasis on exploration. One thing you will notice very quickly is how many icons are scattered all over your map and minimap, showcasing all the different points to explore. I refer to these games as collectathons, and they are kinda my thing. I love the freedom to just run around killing what you want when you want, collecting everything that pops up in my general vicinity. But I am also someone if not given enough reason to push forward with the story and quests, I will continue being a dog chasing whatever squirrel passes in front of my path. Admittingly, TOF's story wasn't very engaging to me. And honestly, the dialogue and questing was very milquetoast. You tell someone you're looking for X. They don't know who X is, but they send you to Z to see if they saw X. When you ask Z, they also have no clue who X is. But now that you're here, can you help them with a quest? Bleh. Probably the biggest focus of the game is unlocking weapons, which are also tied to a character. Collecting nuclei, in its different colors, allows you to gamble on unlocking new weapons. Now listen, I don't love the gambling mechanics in games. I would much rather collect items that are used directly towards getting what I want. But when it comes to free-to-play games, this is also one of the best ways to get money out of people. Alright, tangent time. Let's talk about Diablo 3 at launch and playing the auction house. To summarize, players spent most of their time on the auction house trying to get items they wanted, because this practice was more effective than actually going and killing the monsters for loot. What we learned is, for the player, this is terrible psychologically, as rewards aren't attached to gameplay. But what we also learned, for the same reason, this is a great way to get people to spend money on a game. Now, would you pay an in-real-life fee to open a chest? Doubtful. While I shouldn't assume, I'm going to and say you probably would think that was terrible game design and stop playing. But if that free chest gives you a currency that is used on a menu that takes you away from the game for an attempt at super cool new item, but once you get there, you find out it takes 10 of that currency, they can convince people to buy more of that currency because of separating getting the item from gameplay. And while there is nothing wrong with a player supporting a game maker by purchasing in-game stuffs, the buy currency for a chance at super cool new item plays into gambling addictions, which, IMO, isn't super cool. And with Tower of Fantasy, that new weapon is also a character, giving it a personality, which connects with people on an even more personal level than better stats, compounding this issue. Okay, I probably should have waited to discuss that further into the review, because it's going to be hard talking about other aspects of the game with that albatross hanging around its neck. So weapons. The diversity of styles from each type is pretty solid. The sledgehammer's slow but massive attacks, while the agile action from the scythe both feel satisfying in their own ways. The addition of different elements to weapons also adds a little bit of extra strategy to the game's combat. And enemies will have resistances. You will have 3 weapons equipped at a time, allowing you to balance for these elemental resistances and weaknesses. And as you are attacking, you will build up a powerful special attack that will trigger on weapon switch, adding a little more tactics to your combat approach. Overall, the weapon mechanics in combat is a pretty enjoyable experience. Now, I found the keys for switching weapons a little weird though, which were Q, E, and R. Q and E make sense, but the R is really odd feeling, and something I couldn't get used to. Maybe too many years of the key being reload in other games made it hard to acclimate to. I also was thrown off when looking at the bottom of the screen for which key I had what weapon equipped to, because it would show a different order based on what was in use. And actually, It feels like they had the right idea doing this, but the wrong execution. Dropping the R key and making the Q and E cycle between previous and next weapon would work perfectly. As I said earlier, collectathons are kind of my thing, but the amount of things to collect in this game is a little overkill. Between all the food and cooking ingredients, multiple chest types, and nucleus puzzles, I found myself losing hours just going towards the next shining thing in front of me, or the next closest icon on the map. I would set a semi-immediate goal to unlock a nearby waypoint before I logged out. In my head, something that should only take maybe a minute or two. Just to look at a clock and see that I took an extra half hour playing because of all the little things I was getting distracted collecting. Now I don't know if it was my item hoarding syndrome, or the knowledge that I will need a ton of these upgrade regens later on that causes this, but it is painful leaving a chest behind. And I know I will kick myself later on for not collecting the stuff when it was there. And I think what makes it so easy to lose hours of time in this game, it is mostly pretty chill gameplay. Actually, Tower of Fantasy can make for a decent distraction game, or a game where you can multitask and listen to like music or a podcast. Most of the open world combat isn't too demanding, and just running around exploring, trying to find ways of getting all of the different collectibles allows a great chance to decompress. The amount of different menus and screens was also ridiculous. For one, the game has the whole daily sign-in bonus, which is a practice I frown upon. Then there is a battle pass with a premium option. There are also less intrusive menus for global rewards, like for killing named guys or collecting enough of something like mushrooms. Then there is also a journal-like checklist with chapters, with their own set of goals to complete, let alone daily and weekly quests. Seriously, half of the game is just clicking through the menus collecting rewards. Then all the equipment tabs, like the suppressor, the relics page, the armor page, let alone the weapons, and all of these will require their own different parts and regions for upgrading. The weapons need upgrading, both by level and by, I guess we'll call it potential. Then there are all the matrices for each weapon, which are like stat add-ons that need leveled up independently of the weapon. I'm probably forgetting about half of the menus, but I think you got the point. Normally, this is the part of the review when I discuss all of the complaints with the game, so I guess in this one we'll just refer to it as miscellaneous complaints. Cooking takes a really long time. While you can cook as many of a recipe you want at once, but this feels like a waste of time if you are only making one or two of something. Then there is the collecting of all the food's ingredients. Collecting things one at a time is a little on the tiresome side. Would it really ruin things being able to collect 3 berries from a bush at once, instead of having to press the key 3 times? When it comes to collecting food in general, less actual points of collection but higher quantities would balance time much better. Then there is the fire I make hurting me. Why do you give me melee attacks that catch the ground on fire, that I then take damage from if I continue to fight in? What purpose gameplay-wise does this serve other than to be an annoyance? And it isn't even like I can choose not to use fire weapons, as they are regularly needed to burn open nucleus puzzles. Then the controls can be a weird mixture of sticky and slippery, which is most noticeable while climbing. The character would try to stand up on too steep of cliff edges, and then enter the fall state, but it would also be difficult trying to jump off a cliffside, because the character would try to re-establish the climbing state. Yet, when I tried to use this to my advantage to climb, by trying to jump and grab something like a ladder, my character would refuse to enter the climbing state. Grabbing throwable items was finicky too. The game doesn't let you pick things up from a running state, which means you have to basically stop for an entire second before attempting to lift something. The transition from vehicle to on foot was also picky, and I took fall damage numerous times because I couldn't get off the vehicle. And lastly, I also had a lot of frame drops with this game. I would have constant hiccups going into battle, or the transition to riding a vehicle, or starting to run. I know my 1070 Ti is starting to be an older technology, but at the same time, this game isn't graphically intensive, but I can't say definitively if it was my hardware or the game's optimization. So after 10 hours of gameplay, I can say that Tower of Fantasy is a solid gacha game. But outside of having sci-fi stylization, its differentiation from Genshin Impact is minimal. And I would actually make a case for Genshin's combat being deeper. But maybe if you've had enough of Genshin and need a new game, but really like the game style, Tower of Fantasy might be able to help you out there. But I have to say it again, these games are designed to get real money out of you, so keep that in mind if you are going to play. And I am saying this as someone noticing how much it preys on my collect and hoard every shiny thing I pass over compulsion, to keep me playing long after I am ready to quit. Anyway, thanks for watching.